Alright, what's going on, guys? It's been a little while since we've done any sort of workout content, I feel like, so it's good to be back, I have to say. So I just wanted to kind of touch base with you guys and share kind of the nature of this program, because if you see in the title, it's called Iron Built such and such. So today is the weighted pull-up, or kind of the back and tricep day. But basically my friend Brock has created a gym in the area, and so we've been setting it up for the past couple months or so, and it's been really cool to just see everything start to get fleshed out more and more. So probably as I post these videos regularly, you'll kind of see the progress that gets made week by week. So we've been having a lot of fun setting it up. I'm very excited to have it opened, and it's nice to have a haven again, to have our own kind of environment, create content, have our own kind of equipment, and kind of have a hand in all of that. So I'm very excited for him. I'm very excited for it to open. And basically I'll be doing all my training out of there, and kind of my future workouts and content will all come from there. So we've been doing a little challenge amongst ourselves to see who can get into the best shape, and we're basically basing this program around the equipment that we have in the gym. So it's kind of cool to have everything kind of be specific to what we have, and I will say the equipment that we have has been really nice to work on. And maybe I'm biased, but compared to other gyms, I just find that it feels so good. So the flavor of the day is a back day, and we're doing kind of an anterior posterior leg split. So it's very scientific, but basically the gist of it is chest and biceps. So basically the front muscles and some shoulders, back and triceps with a little rear delt, and then legs. So today's kind of day, we're doing a width kind of focus for posterior. So that is weighted pull-ups. And I kind of chose this day to start off by filming because we didn't really have any dumbbells in the gym. So we only had a couple, I think some 20s and some 35s. So I figured that this would probably be the easiest to kind of start with, just to get the ball rolling. So we are doing 4 sets of 6 to 8 reps. And I usually do a couple warm-up sets of just body weight pull-ups before I start with the weight. But you'll notice here, as I'm pulling, I'm keeping kind of a loose thumb. So I usually keep my thumb out to kind of just think of my hands as hooks. And that allows me to kind of pull a little bit more with the back. And the other thing I want to think about here is kind of keeping my torso, what I would say is upright, what I feel like is upright as I pull through. So you'll notice too, from different angles, as I start to pull, I kind of will tilt a little bit differently as I come up, and that is to try to just keep my lats engaged the whole time, because you'll find that it is really easy, unless you really work towards it, just to be able to get up all the way. You might move differently and lose that contraction in the back. So I'll typically just try to pull and tilt myself in a way that kind of keeps my lats firing the whole time. And then as I come back down, I want to try to think about getting a nice stretch in that lat. So I won't fully release at the bottom, but I will still leave a little bit of tension in there and try to get a nice stretch, because if we're only thinking about the lat, that's the only thing that we really want to kind of keep firing the whole way through. We don't want the arms to get too involved, and we also don't want the shoulders to kind of fully release at the bottom. So the next thing on the docket is a mag grip pull down, and I'm doing the neutral grip here. We're going to do 4 sets of 10 to 12. So for this, I really like the neutral grip as opposed to a wide grip or sometimes even a close grip, just because the neutral, I feel like, is the perfect width to be able to just pull through and keep the lats engaged as well. Sometimes wide, I find that I'm kind of impinged a little bit with my shoulders. They kind of stop my motion from going all the way down as I want. But with the neutral grip, I can really find that I can kind of pull my elbows through, almost in like a J shape as I go down. So rather than just pulling straight down, I kind of pull down and then I pull back just a little bit. So you'll see that in some other angles here. And I find that that really kind of gets a good squeeze and allows me to really hold that tension as I come back out of the bottom of the movement, if that makes sense. So I really like the neutral grip, and I really like the way that it lets my hand kind of fit in the grip of the mag grip. It's more so like you're not really clutching it, if that makes sense. You're kind of just letting your hand kind of rest on it. So it feels really nice to not let your grip take over. So I'm really trying to focus on a weight that I know I can do heavier, but I'm trying to just work on a weight that lets me kind of let only my back be what's pulling, if that makes sense, to really kind of keep that contraction going. So our next exercise here is a dumbbell row, and we're really working on kind of coming forward at the bottom, kind of getting a forward stretch. So a lot of times people usually will start with the weight kind of by their ankle and pull back to their hip, but we're trying to do a little bit more of a stretch here to try to just let that lat kind of fully release at the bottom and get a little bit more, because sometimes when you just go down to your ankle, you'll find that your shoulder will kind of still be contracted, so you'll find that it almost feels like you're pulling up with the rear delt rather than pulling back and through with the lat. And if you think about a movement like this, we're naturally going to be coming up. So what you really want to think about is, instead of pulling up, think about pulling back with the elbow towards the back wall. And you'll notice here that I'm actually using 2 dumbbells stacked on top of each other. Again, that's just because we actually didn't have the dumbbell set, so I had to kind of make do just by stacking one. But I actually kind of found that holding it in that way kind of let the lat work a little bit more rather than gripping it, if that makes sense. So you'll notice I'll have my hand on the back of the bench here, and I'm really not putting too much pressure into that hand. I'm trying to just really focus on kind of just propping my body up against it, kind of just holding it for balance, but not really gripping too hard. You'll notice I don't even really have too much pressure on the bench itself. And I'm really trying to just work on keeping my hip kind of bent to where my torso feels like it's almost horizontal, and I'm kind of in a staggered stance similar to a lunge. But really trying to just keep everything to where I'm feeling like my center of mass or center of balance is in that lat, or kind of the midline of my back here. And for these, I'm doing 4 sets of 10 reps each side, just working on getting a nice deep stretch. And for the next exercise, we have face pulls. So we didn't have a rope attachment just yet, so I just used 2 handles. So this is kind of a modified face pull, but it still worked out well. And we're doing 4 sets of 12 to 15 here. So I'm really trying to kind of keep these moving the whole time to let the rear delt kind of stay engaged and kind of in constant tension. I'm not trying to let go and kind of get too much of a break at the bottom. As soon as I come back forward, I'm trying to pull through again to let that rear delt kind of fire. So with these, I kind of think about pulling out and up with the elbow, and then letting the palm kind of tilt towards my ears, if that makes sense. So I'm keeping my hands kind of close, but keeping my elbows wide. And really that rotation is what sets a rear delt exercise apart from a back exercise. If you just pull through, you're going to get a little bit more back, but if you add that kind of torque or rotation, you get a little bit more rear delt. So with these 2, I usually think about keeping the position of the cable about halfway up the cable stack. I don't like to have it too high or too low. I kind of like to have it centered on the cable stack, and that allows me to kind of feel like I'm pulling through rather than pulling down. So the next exercise is a 2-way rope extension, and you'll notice with these that I'm substituting the handles for the ropes again, but we're doing 3 sets of 2 kind of variations here. The first variation will keep it at 12 reps. The second variation will be 12 to 15 reps, just to get a nice burnout. But you'll notice the 2-way rope extension here, we're going to be more upright and kind of doing a normal tricep extension as we come down. So that's kind of keeping my torso more upright and kind of pulling through. The second variation is going to be bending back about halfway and kind of leaning forward so that you're kind of supporting your weight and the cable weight, if that makes sense. So you're kind of just arching yourself forward, keeping the elbows kind of pointed towards the floor, and then driving those hands kind of down and out, letting the tricep be kind of what controls the direction of the elbow and kind of keeps the shoulder kind of neutral, if that makes sense. So I'm trying to just kind of push through and not let my elbow kind of get too wide, and also not let my shoulder release itself. So this is a really good variation, because after you've kind of exhausted yourself with the first half of the rope extension, you can really kind of burn out with the second half and make it feel like a lot more of an isolation exercise. Our next exercise is for triceps again. We're doing a Barbell Skullcrusher, 4 sets of 10 to 12 reps. And you'll notice here with the easy bar, I'm using a close grip, so I kind of get my hands a little bit more narrow than shoulder width apart. And what I'll try to typically do is think about keeping my elbows upright towards the ceiling, but then angling them back about 2 more inches in my head. And what that allows me to do is feel like when I'm at the top of the movement, my bone of my arm is not being what's supporting the weight, if that makes sense. I'm letting my tricep just be what's kind of keeping the weight up at the top. So it allows me to get a little bit better contraction in the tricep. And you'll notice too, as I'm coming down, I'm dropping it to the forehead, but not really getting too far down. So that way I can kind of keep some tension in the tricep. So it's more so, instead of coming up, it's more so kind of coming out and through. So if you think about that kind of exercise, we're not really pushing up, we're more so thinking about letting the tricep be what's pulling us through, if that makes sense. So really, with any exercise, I try to just break it down to where I'm really just trying to visualize that muscle pulling the weight through its range of motion. And with these two, I'm trying to just keep a nice kind of neutral hand. I'm not really clutching it too hard. I'm not even wrapping my thumb around. I'm just trying to kind of cup the bar in my hands here. And then our final exercise is a really cool dip machine we had picked up. This is the Cybex dip machine, and I actually don't usually like dip machines. I find that I feel it too much in my shoulder, but I really liked this one when we got to try it. So we're doing this for 3 sets of 12 to 15 reps. And I kind of keep the handles a little bit closer for triceps here, but I'll try to almost keep my thighs really close to each other. And then you'll notice too, I do a slight angle of my torso as I push through. So I'll kind of push back with my torso as I drive through with the elbow. And what that allows me to do is feel like my triceps kind of stay neutral through the whole movement. I'm not having to change my arm position too much. I'm just kind of driving down through the range of motion here. So that allows me to kind of contract a little bit better at the bottom and feel like I'm not letting my shoulder get too involved. So keeping the elbows kind of just pinned into my sides, driving through by pushing the elbow and tricep down, if that makes sense. So this is a really great one to kind of burn out on as a final kind of compound exercise for the tricep. So would highly recommend it if you happen to have one in your gym. So anyway, stay tuned for the future videos. I'll be putting the rest of this particular series up. Hope you liked it, hope you got something from it, and stay tuned for the next one.